So I have a question for you. What's the best email marketing platform for creators? It's ConvertKit. It combines powerful automation with an easy to use interface. The heart of their business is their visual automation tool that allows you to deliver the right message to your audience at the right time. They have pre built landing pages and forums, so creating and sending out copy is extremely easy. I personally use it with my business when I'm doing webinars. And you can use it too. Right now, we have an exclusive offer for you. ConvertKit is giving you a freemium membership with full access to the landing pages, forums, and email marketing for free up to 1,000 subscribers. They are one of the only platforms that allows you to add your Facebook pixel to it for free. It allows you to create automation, and it allows you to get the ball rolling with your business. And of course, it integrates with Shopify, Wix, Squarespace, Gumroad, and a ton of other platforms. So what you're going to do is you're going to hit the podcast description and click the link there to get you to this freemium account. It's an amazing service, so make sure you try it out, guys. Let me know how it goes for you. I want to know. All right, let's get into the show. So here's the thing. If you look at who has a podcast, 99% of them are entertainers. They're YouTubers. They're announcers.
Celebs.
Radio hosts. Comedians is a big one. A lot of comedians are podcasters because they have experience talking in front of people. This is an orator sport. This is where you are continuously talking on a mic. So you need practice talking on a mic. A comedian's talking to people 3-4 times a week, right? So he's practicing how to conduct himself in front of people. And on this mic, you're doing the exact same thing. So if you don't have any experience there, you're gonna sound like trash. Hello and welcome to the Hustle Over Everything podcast. This is the podcast where we receive stories, tips, and strategies from entrepreneurs who've done it to help you grow your business and take yourself to the next level as a person. Today we have an interesting podcast for you. Before we get to that, Owen, what's good with you, bro? How you doing?
Another blessed Sunday is here, bro. This weekend was awesome, bro. My boy Logan came through from Sarnia. It's good to see him. We chilled. Actually, we hit a brunch, bro. Talk about having brunch. Like, when you're deprived from brunch we sat down and we had our first sip of beer together on a patio, bro. It just felt like magic, man. So that was awesome. Things are opening up now. We hit up the driving range, got to bond and just catch up. So that was amazing, man. So yeah, everything's going well, man. How about you?
Man, my day's been blessed so far. Today, I went to the calisthenic park. I rented out a bike. And I'm like, you know what? I gotta buy a bike because I'm thinking that it's gonna be costing me way too much to rent out a bike every single day or however much I want to go.
Just cop one.
It's about that time I rent out a bike. Yeah. But yeah, I went to the calisthenic park, got a good workout in. Drove across the beach, playing my favorite Migos album, Migos music. They just dropped. And yeah, I had a beautiful day. Last night, I went out with the girl.
With the missus.
And it was a good vibe. Yeah. You can check my brother out, which is rare. I never go see my brother. I don't even talk about him. So I went to see my brother and met his family. That was interesting, So yeah, then I went out to, what was it, not club, it was like a restaurant called Hapa. There was a beautiful patio and DJ was playing, so it was vibes. I started not feeling like the best though, so I bounced out of there, and I came home in this cave.
Oh my God,
have one of those like sleeps. You just like knock out and don't wake up to the morning.
It's like you think you have energy, but then you see your bed and you're just like, oh, let me just sit down for a sec. And then before you know it, it's curtains. It's just you're finished. That's what even happened to us yesterday, man. We were just drinking up like at the driving range, came back. I thought I'm like ready to go again. And then I just KO'd for 2 hours, bro. It's dangerous, man. Those naps are dangerous. That's what I call them, danger naps.
No, it wasn't even a nap for me. Honestly, I wasn't feeling the best. So I came home and I was in the Uber like, I felt like I had a headache and a bit of a stomach ache as well. So I came home and just knocked out, and I couldn't wait to sleep. It was one of those ones where he came home and was like, "Oh, I can't wait for my bed."
So your eyes are heavy. You know it's gonna be a juicy ass sleep.
Exactly. So, yeah, man. But let's get into it. So today we're talking about launching a podcast. Launching a podcast for the very first time and continuing a podcast. Because the thing is that launching a podcast is actually relatively easy, but continuing a podcast and having a podcast that can grow over time is challenging. So we're going to talk about, going to talk about this entire process from top to bottom and really jump into it today. So, man, I'm excited.
Yeah.
So where should we begin?
Well, we got to first talk about day one coming into launching a podcast is, this is, I've heard this so many times. People have, I have an idea of launching a podcast. You're like, you know what, let me just, they have amazing group chats with their friends. They're like, this would be an amazing podcast if we can just take this wine drinking session we're having with the girls, or you're drinking whiskey with the boys, and hey, this would be a great podcast. But it's totally different from that. It sounds easy in theory, but it's a lot harder when you try and translate that into an actual full-on production as a brand. So I think we should start about talking about the vision and everything, and, starting with the end in mind. Where do you want to go with the podcast on that? So I think we can kick things off there and then blow things over with the rest of the equipment and all the things we have to discuss on the agenda today.
All right, boom. So beginning with the end in mind is huge, because you want to think about, what is the how do I word it? At the end of the day, what do I want to be known for? What do I want the podcast to be? What do I want to have at the end of the day? And then reverse engineer how I'm going to get there. Do you want to be Tim Ferriss? Do you want to be, EYL? Do you want to be Joe Budden? What's the goal of your podcast? Are you trying to be, who else is a good
Rogan.
Podcaster? Who's a good female
podcaster?
Rogan, of course.
The Feminist Financial. She just got to the number one of the charts these past couple weeks.
Okay.
The Read.
Shout out to Crystal. And begin with end in mind. We're gonna tell you more about why you should begin with the end in mind as we go on to this. But that's a big thing, because think about it like this: if you have a podcast where you're interviewing many people, you're gonna need many mics, you're gonna need many cameras if you're doing video, and you need to think about the equipment that's needed to have the setup that you want to have at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Or else you're gonna be forking out money damn near every few months,
man,
to try and maintain this podcast.
I also want to mention too, when you begin with the end in mind, it's starting out with a category. Okay, which category do I want to be in? Am I going to be in education? Am I going to be in sports? Am I going to be in comedy, relationships, and etc.? So once you define that, it's now moving on to, okay, where do I want to be with this podcast, right? Do I want to do this as a hobby? Do I want to do this as a business, or do I want to use this as a networking opportunity? So it's breaking these things down is so important, because it's actually going to dictate where you go with it. Because if it's a hobby, you're going to learn, okay, I can only do this maybe 2 times a month. People come check in on me. If it's a daily podcast, okay, I need to perhaps batch my episodes. I need to record everything at once, and people can guarantee an episode at a certain time of the day. If it's a value-driven podcast, hey, this is a marketing podcast. We deliver episodes 2 times a week. You can learn about this, this, and this. These are so important, because it dictates how you're going to produce your show, what type of equipment you're going to need, as we're previously mentioning right now, and etc. So as we go into equipment, what is some equipment people can actually, get started with as a starter, some entry-level stuff, so you actually have great production?
All right, so you can use the microphones that we are using. We are currently using Blue Yeti microphones. We'll link it in the description. It's a very simple and easy microphone to get started. It is plug and play. It's a USB microphone. You plug it into your computer and start rocking. And just that simple. Also, there's other offers like
the Shure SMB7.
Yes.
Oh man, that's a sexy microphone, man. Like the audio on that. Once I hear different shows using that podcast using that mic for the podcast, I'm just like, damn, that's like next level. You know, if you see someone using a Shure SMB7, you know they're actually a serious podcaster, because you don't invest $500 in a mic if you're not going to be doing this every single day. So that is like the MBA of podcast mics. The Blue Yetis, which we use every single day, this is like entry level but still quality production.
Exactly. So for pricing, the Blue Yeti is about $130. That's why it's so easy and entry level, because it's so cheap. The next step up, it could be the Shure MV7, which is $300 Canadian, $298.50. The next one up from that could be the Shure M7B, which is $539 Canadian. So those are your options for producing equipment. So production equipment, pardon me. So yeah, those are some things you can use equipment-wise.
Yeah.
Lighting. This is an interesting thing because we kind of use like a combo of natural light and a ring light. You know, I use a ring light. I just bought it off Amazon. We'll link it in the description, and that made life so much easier for us in terms of getting good equipment for lighting. But also natural light is huge. We try to record during the daytime, usually during the evenings around 6:30, to capture natural light. And leverage that because nothing really beats it. But if not, you can use a ring light. And if you really want to go for it, you can use a backlight and a light on the side as well. And we'll link lighting in the description for you. So, but lighting is honestly something that we could even work on as a podcast. But the thing is, if you're podcasting with video, that's when you need it. If you're just doing audio, then you can disregard this.
Yeah, lighting is key. Even like right now, so we've upgraded. We're looking at ways to up our production. And, you know, I just moved into this apartment and I'm like, you know what? I have a proper setup. So to mimic like a natural studio setting, you know, Alex came up with the idea. Like, hey, how about you just, and we actually got inspired by Andrew Schultz. Shout out to Flagrant 2 Podcast, amazing show. One of the podcasters we look up to in the industry. But if you look at his production setup, he's sitting on a couch, he's on his mic. You'll think he's actually in a studio with Charlemagne, but you know, they're talking from two separate locations, but just having a camera set up and a proper light, and you know, you're streaming that to like a Riverside or a Zoom or whatever recording software you use, it really makes a difference to actually add that human element, like where it doesn't look like you're actually just doing like a Zoom recording. You're in front of your camera or your webcam camera. And actually talk about cameras is next, because we took months to step up our camera work. We were using our MacBook FaceTime cameras and it just looked horrible. You know, you can have an amazing recording, you can have an amazing clip, but if the quality of that clip is just bad, it's grainy, people are going to scroll past that, right? So you don't want to have you don't have a great message, but a lot of it will not get listened to because the quality of it doesn't stand out, and people are accustomed to quality. Because if you look at other content creators, they are putting out top tier work. But as a starter, these are things you can start investing in early, because we were getting our feet wet. We invested in a camera once we could, you know, put our funds together and like, hey, let's take the next level up. So these are things we can come into slowly. But talking about cameras, bro, we made that decision to leave our FaceTime cameras and we hopped into the Sony camera. You know, you did a lot of research into the Sony camera and you came to realize, you know what, this is what we can do now. What is, you know, for the people who are looking to do that next step up for the camera, which camera do you recommend as an entry-level podcaster coming in the game?
All right, so here's the thing you need to know when it comes to having a camera for your podcast. One, it needs to record longer than 30 minutes. If you have a 30-minute plus podcast, that's huge. Mm-hmm. So what cameras do that? There's only a select arrangement of cameras that actually record longer than 30 minutes. And the reason why is because apparently there's some government law that if you record longer than 30 minutes, then it's now a video camera. And then there's some kind of tax they have to pay on that on the manufacturer side.
Oh, okay.
So there's only a few cameras that allow that. So we actually found a hack around that. So what we actually have is Sony Alpha A5100 cameras. But what we do is we attach it to the HDMI cord, the micro HDMI cord, and we record that, we attach that to our computers using an HDMI video capture card. And that allows us to get 1080p video. And we can even record it at 4K on Riverside if you wanted to, but we choose to keep it 1080p because that could crash our computers. So, yeah, 1080p recording on the Sony Alpha A5100. And the reason why we chose this camera is because we found it to be the worst camera on the best block. What I mean by that is it allows us to record everything we need at the cheapest price possible. You know, it's on about $400, $500 right now. At Best Buy, to be specific, it is $484.97, and it allows us to record 1080p content consistently. So that is the camera we use, and it's been great. It's been great. I can't even lie. The thing is that you have to have specific settings, and there's YouTube tutorials to watch to make sure the settings are correct. But once everything's right, you're rocking and rolling. So yeah.
I remember even just when we were looking for these cameras, there were none in stock, and I had to go all the way to Centerville Mall. I don't know what the name of the mall is, but I took like a long trip just to get this camera.
Yeah.
And it was well worth it because, we were deep into Corona season. Everything was going on, George Floyd, Corona, all that stuff. And, we're recording with FaceTime cameras, and it's just like a difference. It was money well spent, guys. I mean, if you're looking to build this podcast, look to spend at least $1,000 on cameras and mics and subscriptions to certain things, such as Riverside, which we're going to talk about next for recording software and others. But definitely camera is everything you need right now, especially when you're looking to make a great podcast. I can't stress that enough.
Yeah, I actually want to add on to that because we're recording virtually, right? And it's a big point to drive home that this camera is for recording virtually. It is not for recording in person because this is hooked up to camera software, i.e. Riverside, that we're recording to. But if you wanted to record in person, it would become a lot more complicated to start doing multiple angles through that process. So I would suggest a Panasonic G7 for recording in person, or a Sony A6400 for recording in person, because you're going to need something that has mic inputs, and you're also going to need something that can record for over 30 minutes for your podcast. So those are the two cameras I would suggest if you're going to record in person. And be prepared to have a ton of flash drives, external hard drives, what do you call it?
Takes up space.
Takes up a lot of space. Because the thing that sucks about this is that you're gonna need to, one, be able to edit as well. We'll get there, but it's just that it's not even complicated edits. It's just consistently long things that you have to watch out for. So, but yeah, that's neither here nor there. Let's move on. I think that's all for. Oh, now recording software. Let's talk about that.
Okay, let's give them a history of the different recording software we've used as rookies and now coming in as professionals now.
All right, so we started on Zoom, and that was bollocks. It was trash. From Zoom, we went to Zencastr. And Zencastr was cool for recording audio only. Yeah, it wasn't bad. I don't think there was anything wrong with it. After that, we're like, all right, we want to do audio and video, so how are we going to do it? So we went back to Zoom because Zencastr didn't have video at the time. And after that I think we went to, What was it after? It wasn't Riverside straight after. It was something else after.
We went to we tried Ecamm for a bit, but we didn't actually launch a episode with it. It's just like a trial run.
Yeah.
But we realized like the complications that come with using Ecamm, so we went back to Zoom, and then you brought up Riverside. Quality you get from like a recording standpoint, you get HD, hi-fi sound using like studio sound with it. So yeah, man, it was a great investment, man. Especially Zoom. Zoom is for meetings. It's not used for podcasting.
Yep, for webinars, man. And your podcast is not a webinar, so get off that. Now, when it comes to recording software, there's two main platforms that you're gonna be choosing between. It's Riverside and it's Ecamm Live. Those are the two ones at the end of the day. When it comes to price, I love Squadcast prices themselves out. The only two ones that you're going to be comparing is going to be Ecamm Live and Riverside. We tried Riverside and we tried Ecamm Live, and we actually ended up going with Riverside. And what happened when we tried Ecamm Live is we saw our guests glitching. We recorded a test podcast ourselves, and it went quite well. They had features to be able to add media to, which was great. But then once we actually launched the podcast, it was trash. So we ended up hopping right off of that and going back to Riverside and finishing up the podcast there. So we 100% suggest Riverside as a podcast platform. Point blank, period.
Facts.
Now let's go on. Riverside, if you want to sponsor us, come talk. Let's do it.
Hey, come chat, yo. Bring the bag.
Exactly. So after that,
so what we got next year, bro?
We got guest or not guest based. That is a huge thing. There's a lot of benefits and pros and cons when it comes to having a guest based podcast or not a guest based podcast. And we're dabbling between the two, and we're gonna talk about the benefits to start off. So the benefits of having a guest based podcast, for one, without a doubt, is networking. The network ability of having a guest-based podcast, especially as a guy, right? Because as a guy, especially during this time, there's not any strong way to network. Before, you could be like, yo, let's go play ball. Can't do that.
At the barbershop, you meet other, like, you're waiting for a cut, you start striking up a convo. I met a lot of great friends at Onyx when it was like Young Street. You're waiting for a cut. They had like it's like you're waiting for a doctor's appointment. And you just start striking a conversation with someone. Oh, yeah, I think the Raptors did this. And then you start chopping it up. He's like, oh, what do you do? I'm in this. I'm in that field. And then, oh, yeah, I know this guy. Let's connect. So it's powerful podcasting for guys. Yeah.
But you can't go to a barbershop as a networking tool, though. You can't be like, yo, bro, let's go get a haircut together. Like,
for sure.
Off top. If you're boys, then you can do that. But like, if you're just out meeting like, yo, what's going on, bro? You said you're gonna go get a haircut? Definitely not. Do not approach no man.
But yo, that can be a new concept, bro. Like networking over haircuts.
Unless if the podcast,
especially if you have a proper setup.
If the podcast is at the barbershop, then it can work. You know what I'm saying? If you're like, yo, let's go make a, what do you call it? What's LeBron's show called?
The Shop?
The Shop, yeah. The Shop, you have a shop type episode like, yo, this is going to do it in a barbershop. That could be fly, But in terms of actually doing it like that, nah, bruh. So that's all you really have. Or shisha spots. Shisha, golf. Golf is another one.
Golf's a great networking.
But yeah, in terms of that, nothing really compares. All right, back to it. Networking is great. You got a fresh perspective. You get to learn. And you can be selfish with the topics you choose and the guests you have on to serve yourself, right? So if you want to talk about getting a lawyer, you can just be like, yo, instead of paying a lawyer for their time, you say, hey, come on my podcast, and I'll ask you all the questions I have about it without, of course, being specific to yourself. But you can ask general questions and have them answer that and provide people with value. So everybody wins, And you reach as well because they will repost it.
Yeah, and they also benefit from it as well because if you're creating content and you're creating a platform, instead of, we're talking about networking, instead of asking them for a cup of coffee, like, coffee chats or let me pick your brain, that really offers them no value at all. So thinking about like using your podcast to meet the people you want to connect with or you admire and you want to like just actually interview them and, put them in the best light possible, then a guest-driven show is the best part you can do that, especially in business or in any field that requires like marketing or, any business type of show. These are great for those type of podcasts if you have like a great guest driven show.
Most definitely. And it helps. The thing about guests was that it boosts your brand, right? If I get Oprah on my show is now a show that has a billionaire on it, So you think about that. And there's a power of standing next to somebody in the picture, because their clout rubs off on you when they stand next to you, right? So things to think about.
We've had a lot of great people on the show which we got to connect with, and they're in our network now. So that's one great advantage of this past pandemic, right? People were in their houses. We wanted to talk to them, and they're like, hey, I'm not doing any public, stage-wise speaking events, so let me go on as many podcasts. So we tapped into that, and yielded a lot of great things out of it. So I'm really proud of what we did with that.
That's a fact. All right. So here's the pros of having a no guest show. A lot less pressure. When you have a guest show, you have to prepare for the guest to come on. You have to do discovery calls, and we'll talk about that in a second. And you have to see if they're quality for your podcast. Even if the guest is good at what they do, that doesn't mean that they're good to have a podcast or have as a guest on your podcast, which is something you really need to think about. Even if sometimes they might have a YouTube channel, and the YouTube channel could be popping, but they come on the podcast and it's a live conversation, which is different from a pre-recorded conversation where they can edit things out as they please and present a specific energy to you. So you really have to be able to decipher whether that guest is qualified for your podcast or not, or let's say he is a coder, an amazing coder that made an amazing website, but that doesn't mean he knows how to talk on a podcast, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And in this also, you as a host, it saves you a lot of time too, because when you do these discovery calls and you realize, okay, this person is not as, they can't really articulate their thoughts properly to over an hour period where, at the end of the day, it's all about your listeners. You're looking to create the best product as you can. You'll realize a lot of these people in a live conversation, they're long-winded. When you ask them things that they know, the nerves get the best of them to answer the thing perfectly. So they mumble over their words, and over the time of a recording is done, you go back and listen to it. Editing becomes a cumbersome process, right? So having the no guests on your show is you realize, okay, it's all me. I'm going to have the notes. I'm going to record it. I'm going to deliver the value I can, and we're going to call it a day. Some people you think would be great guests on your show are not great guests on your show. They're just great entrepreneurs, but they're not great speakers to come and articulate how they got there with their business or with their life that you want to interview them for. So these are some of the major things we've realized over our time recording is, hey, some people are great at, we had a lot of people who have YouTube shows, and they came on and they were great on their shows, but on the podcast, they can't really articulate it because they, thinking about everything they've done and putting it into like a quick 2-minute sentence is just tough.
It is. It really is. All right, let's move on. Hosting. Where to host the podcast. All right, so this is a bit interesting because we hosted on Anchor currently, but after, looking at it, like, man, should you have hosted on something else? Because the analytics that Anchor gives us is
so
trash. The analytics that Anchor gives is really bad. Of course, it prioritizes Spotify with a lot of the links it gives. So, because Anchor is owned by Spotify, so there's other places you can have your podcast hosted. That includes Buzzsprout, Libsyn, Podtrack. There's a few places you can go to have your podcast hosted where you don't have to, go through the process. What Anchor is great at, is being able to upload easily and have that go wherever you want it to go. That's one thing that, Anchor does beautifully.
If I were to ask you your top 3 uses for Anchor for a new podcaster, what do you think the top 3 positive things are, and the top 3 disadvantages of using Anchor?
Top 3 is the UI. So number 1, it's the UI. Being able to just pick up your phone if you wanted to, record a podcast, and then send it out and have it go on Spotify, Apple, Tidal, whatever. No, probably not Tidal, but whatever podcast platform you listen to is great. Number 1. Number 2, being able to arrange the podcast in the back end. If you upload a podcast is great as well. You know, being able to simply arrange the aspects and different compartments of a podcast is great. Third, I'd say it's probably it. I don't know if I have a third.
A third?
You have a third?
I mean, I can add a third. The third, it just shows you, you know, where people are listening to your podcast, right? I think it's broken. It's really dumbed it down for new people who are coming into podcasting. I think we can distinguish this there, because I think as we're advancing in podcasting, we want to learn more. We want to see more analytics. We want to see where people are stopping, where people are, you know, the number of subscribers. Anchor doesn't really tell you the number of subscribers. It gives you the audience number, right? So it's a great entry-level tool for you as a new podcaster. But as you advance yourself in podcasting and you start having a weekly show and you're building a business around it, your stats are extremely limited. Because if you're going to go do monetization for your show, these advertisers want to know how your podcast performs. And if Anchor shows you the audience you have, which changes weekly because it shows you, okay, in a week, how many new downloads or how many new listeners did you get? It refreshes all the time. So to have a true value of your audience, it doesn't show you. So it's good just to show you, oh, your country, where people are playing your podcast, which country, how long they're listening to an episode on average. And also that stat is also kind of like murky all the time. What else? Yeah, just like entry level analytics. I think it's good for that. And then when we get to the negatives, it's kind of whack because we're looking for subscribers. We're looking for certain things that it doesn't provide.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it doesn't provide. Mm-hmm. It doesn't actually go to all the platforms. So it's going to negatives. Top 3 negatives. It doesn't go to all the podcast platforms. It doesn't go to Tidal. It doesn't go to Stitcher. And it doesn't go to iHeartRadio podcast apps or Amazon either. So and Amazon's going to be a big one in the future. So we have to get prepared to how we're going to get our podcast on there, or not have it on there and try to broker a deal or something like that. But that's neither here nor there. Mm-hmm. So those are the pros and cons. That's one con, pardon me, of Anchor. Other cons, I'd say sometimes the UI can be glitchy in the back end. Other than that, I'm just back at 2 again. The UI can be glitchy and it doesn't go everywhere. And then, of course, analytics, number 3. The analytics, like I said, is really bad. Really, really bad. So, yeah, watch out for that, guys.
Yeah, they should clean that up, man. Mm-hmm. Even adding that subscriber count, it can really show you the progress you're making with your show. Mm-hmm. Because if you're just shooting things in the dark, I mean, how do you know you're progressing? So I think now we're like dabbling in other insight tools that gives us, you know, a true view of the audience, which is like next level. But, you know, talking about entry level stuff here, Anchor has its benefits, but it also has its disadvantages as well.
Yeah. All right, so let's move on. Entertainment value or education value. This is a big one. One thing I wanted to highlight is, what is the show about? Is it entertainment or is it educational? What is the core competency of the podcast? You know, ours is way more educational than entertainment. We're not here to make you laugh, unfortunately. You know, we're not here to.
We wish we can make like a business podcast that's funny, like that just has you ha 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 ha. But that's not it, man. You know,
it ain't it. I don't even know is there any business podcast that's funny?
I mean, Ben Baller's pretty funny, but he talks about life and his own businesses, and he has like just the fact that he's always swearing and he just keeps it so raw. Mm-hmm. it adds that comedic element to it. But any business show other than the Ben Baller podcast, which is actually on the business category, so that's why I'm
Honestly,
saying
I hate that.
That's funny. Like when someone puts a business category, but it's not really like a business podcast.
Yeah. What's two things you've learned from Ben Baller's podcast? Have you learned anything?
From him, no, but he's had some guests who've come on the show, which were pretty good. You know, he had the founder of Doge on his show.
Wow.
So he gave like the history of Dogecoin. So that was pretty cool. But in terms of him as a individual business person, if he's not really talking about the success he's had with his businesses and things you could do like strategic, that's not the show for you. But if you want to listen to some guests where he just asks them personal questions and keeps it raw, then he's the person to talk to. But in terms of strategic elements, I haven't really found that from him personally as a podcaster.
That's exactly what I thought. And that's what I'm like, man, go into entertainment, bro. Get into comedy or something, bro. Like, come on.
Go to comedy, bro.
Leave that for us, man.
Yeah.
All right.
So, where are we at here, bro?
To put a button on this, entertainment or educational value, what's going to be the core competency of your podcast? And try to have a little bit of both, but, just focus on one specific aspect to make sure that people are coming for that specific thing every single podcast. Now, let's get into marketing.
Oh, before we hop into that as well, too, I wanted to distinguish the difference between having a comedy-driven show and, let's say, like a value-driven show where you're educating people. And we realized this as well in creating content. So we are posting a lot on IG. We're posting clips. We're posting all these different stats and, value-driven posts. But you got to understand, like, when people are on social media, they're looking to pass time. They're looking to, consume stuff that's going to make them laugh, feel good, so they can get that dopamine hit. So when you have a business show, people are not really inclined to interact with your podcast and with your clips for the way they'll interact with a comedy post. And I'll give you an example. So you post like a great clip about an interview with someone for, like, let's say it's a 30-second clip, and they show, okay, these are the different strategies you can use to save money. And then you have someone who's talking about like a major epic fail or something like that, or some raunchy story on IG or TikTok. Someone scrolling will want to post like laughing emojis on that post, or if it's a story, they'll just, hit that laughing emoji, which allows them it's going to help the Instagram algorithm. Where for education, it's a lot harder because it takes a lot more intellectual capacity to interact with it. So if you're going to comment on this, you're not just going to leave like 100 emojis or whatever. You're like, okay, no, I have to offer something of value here in the comment. I have to say something. So as someone's scrolling really fast, it's so hard for them just to say, okay, what comment can I come with? Unless they're a diehard fan, then you have those people. So don't be surprised if you go the value side and you're putting all these amazing posts and they're not really getting much interaction as you're building an audience, because people are wired differently for different platforms than they would if you were to start like a comedy podcast where people can just easily start laughing at it from the rip. That's the difference we found from ours, especially when we look at the stats. We see a lot of people saving the content. We see 25 people saving it. That means they love the content, but they want to consume it later so they can learn. By interacting and leaving a comment, there's a small window that exists, and once that's passed, they're not going to really interact with it. So you will get likes, but comments come at a premium just because of the category we have our show in. So be careful of that once you are launching an entertainment value-based show or a content-driven show, which is based on, giving and educating people.
And that goes perfectly in with marketing, because that is your marketing. The snippets, the clips that you post is your marketing. So the question is, where do I create my snippets? We create ours on a mixture of headline and Canva. That's the way we do it, to keep it simple. And it's been pretty good. I can't even lie to you. They're both free. Headliner is free. Canva is free. And you can use that to create clips easily and get them out. On Headliner, you can create those audiograms. Audiograms is when you see the image or a slight video with the waves going up and down, or the that little graph bar chart going up and down. So Headliner is great for that. One thing that I've learned as well with marketing. So you want to say something, bro? Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say Canva. It's an amazing tool. I mean, if you don't know graphic design, we've built our entire Hustle Over Everything brand using Canva, from our logos to our aesthetic for our brand guidelines, our fonts that we use. They all come from Canva. Even designing the merch, a lot of the stuff we have on our website comes from Canva. So this will be your baby into building your podcast into a brand. You'll come up with your Instagram post templates, your LinkedIn templates, your YouTube. It has everything you need to make a successful brand for your show. So really utilize that, and you can just duplicate that all the time. So if you have like a clip, easy, just throw that on Canva, and then you can just churn that out. And you can even upload from Canva as well. You can plan, as you were mentioning last time, right? You can plan your posts using Canva, which is like a threat to all the planning tools that you have for social media. Exactly.
I'm sorry.
It's over. It's curtains, man.
Later is about to die. I give them like 3 years, and it's curtains for
them. They're on a lifeline, eh?
Yeah, for sure. Because once Instagram starts importing posts into a calendar form on Creator Studio, people can actually plan out their posts all the way through. It's going to be a wrap for later. I'm sorry. All right. So
ironic that it's later and it's like, see you later.
Don't kill me. That's such a dad joke
there for you guys.
That was horrible. But
no, dad joke, bro.
Dad joke. All right. So, one thing I've learned as well that's been really important with podcasting is timestamps. Timestamps have been big because not everybody wants to come and hear from you. For everybody who comes in this rock with us, we appreciate y'all. But that's not everybody. Some people just want to get the exact value that you saw, that you showed them on that snippet, and then get what they want and then go. Sometimes they'll know that you're talking about a trending topic. They're probably going to cover that. I want to hear what they have to say about that. And they'll go to your timestamp in your bio and go to that podcast moment and bounce. And that's the game. This is the honest truth about how people move sometimes. So timestamps is huge. That's one thing we've incorporated the podcast, and we've seen have a tremendous difference with the listenership. So timestamps is huge.
Yeah.
And the next one is podcast notes. This is good for SEO. And actually, Google is about to start importing podcasts as a SEO factor soon, which is great. But of course, more to come on that once they actually roll that out, because Google takes time with the rollouts usually. Podcast notes are great for going through the details of the podcast, having that on a blog or just a page to be found on Google. So if someone's looking for that specific topic, they can find you.
I also want to add, we were talking about marketing. We touched upon Headliner using Canva, podcast notes, timestamps. And one thing that you got to really realize, this takes time. So be ready to invest a lot of time into these things. Podcast notes, major thing. Finding time to make Canva templates and actually designing them, this takes time. Timestamps, you got to really go back on your show and like listen to certain topics where people can actually just, click that time and just listen to it. But all in all, coming in as a new podcaster, you got to realize there's one thing to record, and then there's another side of marketing and promoting it, which is also a different beast on itself. So think about what time you're going to allocate to editing, what time you're going to allocate to recording, what time you're going to allocate to marketing. These are three separate things that require so much mental energy to really create a good audio listening experience and also brand experience for your fans. So prepare to like find people. If you're doing a solo show, this is going to be like a big mountain for you to climb. If you have a team, then good on you. But if you're coming in alone, like from day one, this stuff is going to take a lot of investment from you in terms of time, energy, money as well, in terms of if you're going to find an editor, if you're a brand new editor, making these templates and etc. So, or even if you use Fiverr to make notes, just be ready for a huge investment on the marketing side. I think we can't overstate that anymore.
Yeah, things to think about is, do you want to hire a VA to do this? Because it's actually pretty monotonous and easy to do once you have the flow of it. So think about hiring a VA, because what you could do is record your screen and then hire a VA to do exactly what you did on that screen recording. So very simple tactics, but it's just monotonous and time consuming. So think about exporting that to a VA to get done. Of course, you can find a VA on Fiverr or Upwork to get that done.
Upwork, yeah.
All right. So
editing, bro. This is you.
Editing, dog. Oof, man. Editing's such a beast. So once we get the podcast recorded on Riverside, we usually export that MP4 and WAV file to get that on the specific platform that it's supposed to be on. So the biggest thing that we do right now is get the content off of Riverside as a WAV file, and we put it into GarageBand and record it on GarageBand. And one thing we do is, we go through the ums, the ahs, and try to make that a consistent show throughout the podcast. Once that's done, we then pull it out and try to remove the noise in Audacity. The noise reduction tool in GarageBand is trash. Complete trash. But in Audacity, they have an amazing version. One thing to note is that you need to have a WAV file in Audacity to use it, whereas in GarageBand, you don't. You can just have MP4. And once you have that WAV file in Audacity, it's very simple to take or highlight a specific moment where there's no sound and then get that audio reduced. You go to noise reduction and effects, then you get noise profile, then you hit reduce noise, and that gets rid of all the noise. And then you apply that to the entire podcast, and that noise gets straight out of there. So Audacity is great for that.
How you came into the podcasting as a brand new editor.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to really hone in your flow, your sequence, and just your expertise overall?
About 3 months. 3 months to get it done.
3 months?
Yeah. I wish I had watched YouTube videos on the noise, not noise cancellation, but noise reduction. I think that would have really helped. But yeah, it's a process, and you need practice overall to get it done. I would definitely suggest YouTubing how to edit your podcast on GarageBand and how to reduce noise or hisses on YouTube as well. YouTube University is where to go. So yeah, that's big gems there. That'll help your podcast sound a lot better. Yeah. Also, there's an app called, let's see if I have it here, Krisp. Krisp is a platform that has a free version of it, but not for long. You get about 240 minutes every week. So that allows you to actually take out noise or have a noise cancellating headphone and speaker as you record. So shout out to Krisp. That one's a good one too.
I was going to say, bro, this is our school of hard knocks, bro. You didn't go to editing school. You didn't do anything, but out of necessity, you had to show out, you had to learn how to do it. And podcasting has taught us so many skills that we did not know we had, but they just had to be there for us to succeed. And I really commend you, Alex, for learning editing and producing the show every single week. It comes out great. And gotta give you your credit, man.
Appreciate that, man.
Pay homage.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right. So after that, now let's get to guest acquisition. Man, this has been a process. It's still a process.
Where do we start with this? Yeah.
All right. So first things first, I'd say getting guests is a long process, man. It can be easy. It can be hard. We've had days where the guest, we DM a guest and they come on just like that. We've had times where, we've emailed their team that, oh, can I talk to this person? Then they say, talk to this person. And then it takes months before we get the guest on. There's that. So be prepared for everything. But one thing I want to say is have a concise email or DM that explains, one, who you are with a link or a tag to your page, and an image that helps people visualize who you actually are. Also, speak to that person's why. That's a big one. People already do that when they send out cold emails. Speak to that person's why. If they started something when they were a kid and that relates to your podcast, have that in your email. Speak to their why, so they're not just coming on for the clout, but they're coming on to speak to their why, to speak to something bigger than themselves. That has been one of the biggest catalysts to getting guests on the podcast. Well, one of the things we did is we had a podcast playlist called Rapper Go to the League, and that helped us get Paul C. Brunson on, Mario Armstrong on, Carl Edwin on, and really helped propel us, as a podcast. That was probably one of our, best playlists we dropped, as well as with getting people like Pollyanna Reed on, Vivian K, having a why that we're attesting to every time we speak to a new guest. So they're coming on not just for the clout that they'll get, but actually, building something with people that they believe in. So that's a big one. The two ways that we reach out to people are through DM, which is still great to this day, and email. We can find people through email on rocketreach.co. It's an email scraper. We use that. And through DMs, we can literally reach anybody. Like I've reached out to Jay-Z's Taylor and got a response, which blew my mind. We reached out to people that we never thought we'd get in touch with, but we have, just through DMs. So shoot your shot. If it goes in, if it banks in, it's still in.
It goes in.
It goes in. So
if it's like a Kawhi shot, it bounces on one end to the end, and then 2 times, and then drops. You still made the shot, right?
That's a fact.
You still scored, man. You still scored. And I also want to say what Alex is saying about the strategic point about, hey, Paul C. Brunson, Mario Armstrong. It's so important to have that angle. So one thing that we always look at is which holidays are coming up, which certain times of the year can we really leverage. So for these guests, it was like Black History Month, which really tied onto the theme that we were going for. And then other stuff that's coming up, you got to look at your show and, okay, this guest does this every single year. So if it's like a convention they go to, it's like, hey, I noticed that you are about to speak at this convention. This would be a great warm-up just to say, hey, I'll be at this convention at this time of day. So it's like more marketing for them. It's actually an incentive for them to come on your show. Or if you just realize they wrote a book and they're about to release it, say, hey, I know you are talking about marketing on your next book, and I know you are going to be doing on a media tour. Who can I reach out to so I can add our podcast to your media circuit that you're going to be doing to promote the show? That's a great way to leverage it, because now they need to come on your show to promote the book. No matter how big your audience is, that podcast is going to live on forever. So just be mindful of those certain things, know certain dates, have like a list of the guests you want on your show, what matters to them, and what events and what type of things they got going on, and then tailor that succinct message to them. And then it opens the door. It's going to open a conversation. If they don't say yes or no, this is what they'll do. They say, email my PR person at so-and-so and so. That shows you interest, and that's like you're in. So essentially, you got to sell the PR person on your show, because now like the person who you're targeting has given you the green light. So that PR person, if they see your email, they're going to know that, hey, so-and-so forwarded me my email to you, so let me respond to this and let's take a call. And then it's your job right then and there to sell them on why that a guest should be on your show. So that's a big thing we've realized as well, is events throughout the year matter a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And speaking of events, man, the way we store these events and get organized around these events is using specific platforms. One platform that we use is Airtable. Airtable has been great for podcast organization. We use that to store the details of every podcast. We use those for guest storing. We use those for sales as a CRM, and like the status of which guest is going through. It's been great. And also, what's been great for us is Google Folders. It's free. Comes with our Google account. That's been amazing. Am I going through these too quickly? Anything you want to add on?
Even though it's Alex and I who are doing the show right now, we know there's going to be a certain point we're going to have 4, 5, 6 people on the team who are going to be doing production, going to be doing editing, they're going to be doing sales. And it starts from day one. The habits you start implementing in the early stages of your podcast really allow you to get into a flow and a system. So by talking about flow is, hey, I know when Alex is done editing the podcast, he's going to have the blurb because I'm going to need that blurb to put in the newsletter. I'm going to need that cover to put on this side of things. Alex has a person he just found out to bring on the show. Okay, I can go check the net new names that are on the Airtable to see what I can know about the guest, instead of him saying, hey, we got this person. I'm like, okay, let me go look at the work that you put in so I can go check out. So it's like a nuclear system that you're going to need to have to conduct your show, because the more episodes you do, the more you're going to realize that there's a lot of information coming in, and you need to store that in a single way that everybody has access to it, and everybody can always go and check, okay, this is what we got going on. These are the next episodes we got coming on this week. We have this recording. Okay, let's prepare the prep doc for that person. So Airtable is the best tool that we have, and you have so many templates you can take advantage of on that platform. So there's no reason for you just to start something fresh. They have a podcasting template. They have all these different sales templates. They have project trackers, marketing, whatever it is.
Eventually, we're going to have manuals in there as well. So we can document the process, and then people just go straight to that to record that. And that's one thing that I think we slipped on. I slipped on personally, and I got to take responsibility for that, is I didn't document my editing process enough, so that when I was gone, I could easily send that to Owen, big yo, Owen, this is what I do, da-da-da-da-da. So you could just follow that step by step and have a podcast out. You still figured it out. You still got it done. But that's one thing that I feel like as a podcaster you should do, so you can get that process to somebody else. So don't do the mistakes we had. So
even just scalability too. So if we're not available to edit the podcast, hey, you can do it, especially because it's your birthday, right? And you're going away for the weekend. Yep. That would definitely help. And think about that, guys. It's just the two of us right now, right? It's just the two of us. You think that we know, I know, he knows everything I know about the newsletter process. I know everything about the editing process. It doesn't work like that. Everything needs to be in place. It needs to be documented, recorded, written, brand guidelines for your logo. If you're setting that out to a PR person, they need to know everything about what to do about your show. So manuals and steps, even your podcast, these are so important, because it's going to really allow you to become successful in the long run, because you have a system in place. Even if it's for 2 people, it can work for 10, 15, 20 people. And that all starts from day one when you start your show.
Exactly. So, yeah, with that being said, I think that wraps up everything from us when it comes to launching a podcast. Oh, one thing I want to mention that's huge, I think we didn't even touch on, is what's the dynamics of your podcast? Is it between you and the guest? What's the dynamics between you and that guest? What's the dynamics between you and your co-host? How does that work? Like for us, when we record a podcast, Owen is more, I see this, and people think I'm tripping, is more romantic when it comes to the story of the podcast, of the entrepreneurship journey.
Yeah.
Right? You get the personal story of the entrepreneur, when we're having a conversation. Whereas on my end, I'm more so like strictly tactics and like the numbers and how you broke down, how you made $1 into $2. And that's like the dynamics we have as a podcast, trying to learn more of each podcast specific, experience. So that's what our dynamic, but the question is, what's yours? How are you and your co-host, or if you're not a co-host and you're just you, what are your dynamics as a person that you're consistently giving them every single week? So think about that as you start to launch your podcast and what elements you're trying to involve in every single one. So, yeah.
Yeah. I also want to say, between, if you have a co-host, it's everybody has a role to play. Just because you're two co-hosts in a show, there's certain things I do well at that, might not really fit in Alex's repertoire. There's some things he does well, I just can't do it well in terms of like, okay, asking certain questions. I'm like, wow, sometimes like, I didn't even notice that. I didn't even think about that. So each person has a role. It's like a basketball team. You have someone playing the wing, you have someone playing the middle, you have someone playing the point guard. You have everybody knowing well, who's distributing, who's rebounding, what's the play here. And that takes practice, right? We didn't figure that out from the day one. We just realized, we're like, hey, Al, I think you're better at these questions. I'm better at these certain things. Let's stick to that. And perhaps we can share as well when we didn't stick to scripts at certain episodes and how that sounded. We had a certain episode we did, I think, with Josh.
Yo, you're so transparent. I wasn't even gonna mention that. I was like, oh man, yeah.
No, the thing is, we had that episode, and my cousin Gabriele, he told me he listened to that episode when I went home for May 2-4, and he's just like, man, that was a great episode. I'm like, oh really? You liked that episode?
He said that?
Like, yeah, man, yeah, he said that. I'm like, oh, bro, you liked that episode? It's like, yeah. I'm like, you know what, Gab, to be honest, that wasn't our finest hour. I'll keep it honest with you, because when we got off camera and we got off the mics, we were saying, hey, that was just out of sync for both of us. And I asked him, like, did you hear that at all? Did you feel that? I was like, not really. I was just listening to Josh and you guys were asking questions. I didn't really know you guys have a flow of everything. But he just liked that because he's into electric cars. But that was a big wake-up call for us, that you got to stick to script. You got to stick to the process of what you do best at, because that feeling we had, bro, of after the recording, we felt waste. We felt like we just shot 0 for 20 in one night. And we just it was a blowout. Facts. That was a blowout loss. Yeah. For a podcast, that's what I call a blowout. We just, we couldn't even put out our bench on the game because we didn't have a bench. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, that was a big, I mean, we can laugh about it now, but at the time we were cheesed. We were so cheesy.
Yeah, it came out crazy. What episode was that? If anyone wants to go listen to that, just if you search Josh Aviv in whichever Josh AVIV in whichever podcast platform you listen to, you can go and check that out. But yeah, that was something. That was interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely in the 80s.
Yeah, man.
So it's
definitely in the 80s.
Is it the 80s or 70s? I think it was late 70s. Late 70s.
Late 70s.
Yeah. So 75 to 80. I think it should be. Yeah.
Let's actually find it now so someone can.
Let's do it.
It's called episode 79, creating $1 billion EV business. If you guys want to see like how out of sync we were, I think this is like a big lesson for you to check out. Grab your notebooks and pens and just look at how disjointed we were.
Shout out to Josh, man. He was a good sport throughout it, man. What was that question you had? That 3 questions, bro. You had a question that was like 3 parts, and he was like, "Bro, what?" The way I say to that, you remember?
He called me out.
He called you out. He's like, "Bro, I don't know how I'm gonna answer that one."
Yeah, he just looked at me and he was so nice, and I can tell he doesn't want to be rude. I was so reclusive after, just because I realized the mistake. And from then on, I was just overthinking everything. Where I was like, okay, damn. Because as well, too, we also got to say, this is business that we never spoken about. So we want to come correct. So trying to come correct and him being there, it just was just a recipe for disaster. And like in terms of like preparation and flow. Yeah.
Prep.
It was,
guys, prep. Because when we don't prep enough, it shows. Because most times, like, you can prep a day and be straight. But if you don't know, if you're net new to a topic, dog, you gotta prep, because we didn't prep enough.
You gotta prep.
We prepped the usual amount, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough, and it showed. Like, for instance, he was like, "Yeah, I have an app," and I was like, "Oh, it's probably not on Android." So I made the assumption it's not on Android. I said, "Oh, what's not Android I'm using?" He's like, "It is on Android. You just didn't search it." You know, and I had to really sit there and take my L of, yeah, I didn't search it. Ooh. Yikes.
Yeah. And also another thing, Alex, bro, is you brought up something interesting when we're doing our mastermind meeting. So what we do together is we have like a Sunday meeting, or sometimes we can link up here in my crib. We can have drinks and just chop it up about like the future and what we want to do. And Alex brought up like a great point about becoming podcasters. So I'm going to let you share the idea of practicing a podcast. So give us like what you realized, what made you realize this, and the idea of practicing a podcast, bro, because that's really interesting.
Yeah. All right. So here's the thing. If you look at who has a podcast, 99% of them are entertainers. They're YouTubers. They're announcers.
Celebs.
You know, radio hosts. Comedians is a big one. A lot of comedians are podcasters because they have experience talking in front of people. This is an orator sport. This is where you are continuously talking on a mic. So you need practice talking on a mic. A comedian's talking to people 3-4 times a week, right? So he's practicing how to conduct himself in front of people. And on this mic, you're doing the exact same thing. So if you don't have any experience there, you're gonna sound like trash. You know, all the times the podcasts you're listening to are people who have been in the game for 10, 15, 20 years. You know, the Brilliant Idiots, Charlamagne Tha God and Andrew Schultz, they've both been comedians and radio hosts for like 10 years, right? And now we're seeing them blossom because they have all of this experience and knowledge when it comes to presenting a story online. And a lot of us don't have any practice there, any experience, yet we see how easy it is to throw up a podcast. So we're just like, all right, let's just do it. But bro, you have no experience talking to people. You know, one thing I think could be I think a lot of teachers could be podcasters too, but they just don't teach. You know, even the roommates, the guy's is a teacher. Hafiz is a teacher. So he has experience talking to people in a broken down way to communicate to people. So if you're not that, think about how you can get there. So one thing we're doing is we're trying to organize practice sessions where we can practice talking, practice, you know, just orating correctly. Because even if you listen to this podcast, there's times where I'm not speaking correctly. I actually was born with a stutter, you know. So for me, podcasting is like putting a middle finger to anybody who said I can't speak, you know. So that's where I think a lot of people lack, and that's what produces those crazy, boring podcasts that happen sometimes, because you're not an orator. You know, and neither were we originally. So now it's time for us to step into that and practice so we can get there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a podcasting as well as a craft. It's a craft in itself. There's a reason why you listen to certain podcasters. There's a reason why you tune in every single day, because they have a way of delivering a message. They have a way of organizing their thoughts. It might be a little sentence, but the way they just communicated that just hits you different and makes you want to just continue listening more and more and more. And that was like, once you brought that up, like, bro, we got to practice. You know, you're almost in tears just because you realize that the uphill battle it takes to really get to the top of podcasting. Yeah. It's like, we have to be great speakers. We have to be great communicators. So this is stuff we can do, like improv. We can do practice sessions where we don't say like Toastmasters, like, right? You know, these things are filler words that just come in and you just put them in there. You got to take that out, because this is a listening experience and people want to listen to you talk succinctly, you know, say things in a sharp way that just hits different. And that comes with practice. You can't come in the game from day one and just kill out of the park, man. It takes time and effort, and that effort comes from reps. You know, you can't go just record 2 hours with a guest and say, yeah, you know, we're going to build. No, you got to record several hours a week to get to that level where you're so proficient, where any topic you can be given the mic on and you'll just sound mint.
Yeah, exactly. Unless you're just like a one-shot kill person, you just come in the booth and you're just killing it every time, which is rare. And that's when people have actual talent, so. But honestly, at the end of the day, talent doesn't work when the work doesn't have talent. So, did I say that right? I don't know if I did, but you know what I'm trying to say.
Is it talent? Talent without hard work, something like that. But all it means is, if you have the talent but you don't work hard, you're just going to be talented. But if you're talented and you work hard, then you create something magical. Mm-hmm. That's the best way I can put it.
Exactly. Yeah. And to wrap things up, some things I want to mention as well is when it comes to production, so things to take into consideration is that you're going to be producing every single week. So we mentioned batching briefly, but think about batching. If you're one person, then maybe batch in a time period that's a little bit more stretched out, so you have enough time to have energy. Because like Paul Brunson said on his episode, it takes a lot of energy out of you to podcast. So if you're not energetic and have that desire to learn or that curiosity, then it's going to show on your podcast and it's going to harm your product, right? For us, we're two people, so it makes us a little bit easier to bounce off each other and disperse that energy, so we can do a lot of podcasts in a small amount of time. Like we've done 8 podcasts in a 24-hour period, right? 8 or 7, something like that, right? So we have that capability. But if you don't, you got to think about that, or you're going to be recording every single week. And if you're a guest-based show and your podcast is coming out Monday and you have a guest on Sunday, then you put yourself at a very interesting predicament, because if that guest don't show up, you ain't got no podcast. Right? So you got to be careful.
You got no content, man.
Exactly. So stack up that content, have a solid batch or archive bank of content so you can release them periodically as you wish, and have fun with it. This is something you want to do because we love podcasts, so go for it. You can do it. You can create a solid podcast. We believe in you. If you starting a podcast, comment what the name is going to be, or send us a DM of your experience, what you plan to launch, because we want to hear it. And stay tapped in with us because we're here to help you.
Yeah, we're here to be part of the community and grow together, because podcasting, it's an amazing community. There's so many on Clubhouse. We've connected with podcasters, and we all want to see each other win. We all want to see each other realize our dreams and have an audience that we can talk to. So we're all in this together, and the best ways to do that is just stay connected and tap into each other for advice and tips.
Yep. Last thing. All right. We learned from Sean Anthony, when you launch a podcast on Apple, try to drop 3 episodes and have the first episode about yourself, so you can actually tell people what the podcast is about, so they can come back and listen. The second podcast, third podcast, and on and on and on and on. Just want to throw that in there because that's an important tip that we didn't get to mention. So, yeah. We ended on that. Anything you want to mention before you get out of here, bro?
We've covered a lot. You can break this down into many different segments. But guys, just get started. But get past the 10 episode mark, because that's like if you don't get past the 10 episode mark, then you're not really podcasting. So if you're really about this, get past the 10 episodes and just keep going. You'll have one shitty episode one day. You'll have one great episode, but just keep going and going and going and going. And then, we'll see each other at the top.
Exactly.
That's my last words.
With that being said, the hustle is what you can't control. So control your grind and control your life. I'm Alex.
And I'm Owen.
And that's Hustle Over Everything, y'all. Peace. Thank you so much for listening. The conversation continues on our Instagram at 247hustler. We post very frequently. And be sure to check out our merch at hustleovereverything.co. We have some amazing sweaters, hats, mugs, and a lot more. Lastly, our Proud to Pay program is linked in the description below. Thank you so much for your support. Talk to you next Monday. Peace.